Welcome to the Adoption and Foster Care Journey, a podcast to encourage, educate, and equip you to care for children and youth through adoption, foster, and kinship care. Hosted by an adoptive mom with over 22 years of kinship and adoptive parenting experience. She's on this journey with you. Please welcome Sandra Flach.
Many are the plans in a man's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails. That is one of my favorite verses, actually. Proverbs 19:21, chosen by our guest today. We'll get to her shortly. I'm your host, Sandra Flach. Welcome to the Adoption and Foster Care Journey, where you will find encouragement, resources, and community. As a mom of 8 myself, 5 through adoption, including 2 now young adults, both diagnosed with fetal alcohol syndrome when they were little. I understand the unique challenges involved in raising kids with trauma histories and prenatal substance exposure. So I'm here for you. Let's do this together. I am thrilled to offer my newest book as a resource. Soul Care Saturday, 52 Devotions for Foster and Adopted Moms, is now available on Amazon. The amazing Jamie Finn of Foster the Family kindly wrote the foreword after she read an early version of the book. This devotional is perfect for us busy moms. You'll find 52 devotions, 1 a week, packed with scriptures and breath prayers and journaling pages and beautiful illustrations, all designed to minister to your heart and refresh your spirit. So I hope that you will check it out. If you do grab a copy, if you have read it, if you're using it, I would just be so blessed if you would go back into Amazon and leave a review. Even if you picked up the book at one of the conferences that I was at, or someone gave it to you as a gift, you can still go on Amazon and just say, I got this at a conference, or I got this as a gift, or maybe you did purchase it from Amazon. Just leave a review. I think we're at 30 reviews right now. My goal is a minimum of 50 reviews, so I would really appreciate it if you could help me out with that. Only takes a second. So thank you for that. Also, as long as I'm asking, please like and follow the Adoption and Foster Care Journey on Instagram and Facebook. We are on Facebook, of course, as the Adoption and Foster Care Journey. And on Instagram, we are at AFC_journey. So I look forward to connecting with you there as well as in person. I am booking now for summer and fall of 2026. I already know in September I will be at the Christian Alliance for Orphans conference in Atlanta. That is September 23rd through the 25th. And I plan to be at Replanted in Chicago, October 15th through 17th. But I'm still adding events to my calendar. So if you are interested in having me come and speak to your group, your church, I've had churches bring me in to lead training and speaking to their foster and adoption ministry families. Maybe you're having a retreat for foster and adoptive moms or parents, whatever you would like to do. I would be interested in being a speaker and being there to encourage your audience, train your audience, especially on the topic of FASD. So contact me. Maybe you're just thinking about, hey, maybe this fall we could do something. So reach out to me. We could do it in person. We could do it online. Whatever works. I'm very, very flexible, but would love to bring this valuable training to you as well. So my direct email, Sandra Flach at justicefororphansny.org, is in the show notes. You can scroll down, reach out to me directly. Also, feel free to reach out to me if, when you're listening to the podcast, you have a question or you have a thought or a suggestion for a guest. Always love to hear from listeners. I am going to start regularly every other month or so doing an FASD Q&A episode like we just did a few weeks ago. So if you have one of the questions, if you have a question you would like me to tackle in an episode, also please feel free to reach out to me. Not only will I answer it in on the podcast, I will respond to your email directly and answer it for you there as best as I can in an email. You know how that goes. So all of that said, let's get to today's guest as we continue to focus on foster care, because it is still Foster Care Awareness Month. Our guest is a foster and adoptive parent, Kirsten Smith. Kirsten Smith. My goodness, every time I look, I don't get her name right. I'm so sorry. Kirsten, I know your name. I just can't read it well. Uh, Kirsten Smith is a daughter of the King, follower of Jesus, sinner saved by grace, wife of Josh, and mama to 9 kiddos and 1 pup. Got to get that pup in there. Please welcome to the show, Kirsten Smith. Hey, Kirsten, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I am super excited. I know we've been connected on social media for a while, and we got to meet in person at Mobilize, Ohio back in March. And so I got to hear you from the main stage, and I'm so thrilled to have you here because I can't wait for our listeners to get to know you as well. So thanks again for coming.
Thank you.
And let's start with the beginning of your story because I know you're mom to 9. I'm mom to 8, so it's not nine's not that crazy to me.
No, yeah.
You know, they all kind of come along in different ways, and I'd love to hear your story. So, what started you and your husband Josh off to pursue adoption and foster care?
Well, I think God planted those seeds in the beginning when he was forming us. And then as I grew up, I was exposed to some different families that were involved in foster care and adoption and didn't think much about it because it was kind of normal for what I was experiencing as a kid. And then I went on to become a caseworker when I graduated from college. So that was never a goal of mine to be a social worker, but I graduated with a degree in child development and family development. And when I was looking for jobs, this was back in the days of classified ads in the newspapers, and there was an ad for a child welfare caseworker in a local county agency, and I applied. Not thinking I would maybe get it. I didn't really know much about that line of work, honestly, but I got the job. So I did that for 3.5 years, and obviously saw a lot and heard a lot and experienced a lot and was exposed to a lot of things that I didn't know. And then I took a break from that and became a nanny because I just needed a break. I wanted to do something social work related, but there weren't any other jobs available at the time. So I did some nanny work for a while. And then my husband and I wanted to start our family, and that was not happening. So we went through the whole infertility, did testing, and decided ultimately, that's when the Lord really brought up foster care and adoption to our minds. And we looked at all of the options for fertility treatments and decided that God was calling us to adoption. So we got licensed to foster, I should say. I was looking everywhere. We got information from international agencies, private, domestic. And then the Lord one day was like, hey, you were a caseworker for kids in foster care. What do you think about that? So we started talking about that and decided that would be the route that we would go. So, yeah, I think we initially pictured both of us bringing home a little baby. And then I thought about the kids that were separated in sibling groups. And my heart just broke all over again. And I thought maybe we could start our family with a sibling group, which I remember saying to my husband, what if we started with a sibling group? And he said, how would we do that? And I said, you'll go to work and I'll stay home. And he laughed, but said, if you tell me that you think we can do it, then I'll believe you. And I'll say we could do that. Well, some days I'm like, oh, maybe he shouldn't have listened to me. But we started our family with a sibling group of 3 then. They were 4.5 and 2.5 and 15 months old.
Wow,
And
little.
yeah, they were little. And the county that they were in had just received permanent custody. And so they were going to be available for adoption pretty quickly. And so we were able to move forward with that. Yeah, and they came and we fostered legally for 6 months before we could petition the court for adoption, and then we adopted them. So we had a little family of five, and thought that that was great. And two boys and a girl, and we had a dog. I thought we had like this little, living the American dream. We just
Yeah.
didn't have a picket fence. Um, and our daughter always wanted a sister. So she would ask if she could have a sister. And I would say, either need to pray that God makes our bodies work that way or that he calls us to adoption again. And we both thought, that's not going to happen. We're just going to have these three kids. But after some time, it was like signs were everywhere regarding foster care and adoption. There were literal signs, billboards. A bus would drive by with a children's services ad on the side. We were hearing things on the radio. Sermons were pointing to orphan care. The church that we were in at the time did a human trafficking conference, and a lot of that ended up being focused on kids that were in foster care, kids that needed to be adopted, even in other countries, just the national crisis of that. And we really felt like, okay, the Lord is making this so clear. If we ignore it, we're not obeying him because he's putting it so right in front of our faces. So we decided to get licensed again. So our first three came to us in 2006, and then we started getting licensed again in 2013, which was pretty crazy. So then we had, after we got licensed, thought we could probably manage another sibling group because logistically we knew how to do that, how to juggle school and doctor's appointments and all those things. So we thought adding, two, maybe three more kiddos wouldn't be that difficult. And we ended up hearing about another sibling group of three. Their case was pretty new. They had only been in care for 3 months at the time. But we got involved and they came to us. And we thought that God was calling us to just foster again. In the beginning, when our first three came to us, because I was a caseworker and saw how difficult foster care can be, I thought, I don't want to foster. I only want to adopt. But then we did end up fostering a little bit and adopted. And then this time around, we felt like God was calling us specifically to foster. And I thought we were going to be those foster parents, 25 years, foster 100 children, I really did. So we bring these three kids in thinking this is probably going to be temporary. Their birth mother was pregnant, and we said we'd take placement of that baby if he needed placed because we didn't want him separated from his siblings if he didn't have to be. He went to birth family on his father's side. When he was 6 weeks old, ended up coming to us. And so then we had seven, four from the same sibling group. And he stayed, and about a year, that was in 2014. In 2015, we found out their birth mother was pregnant again, and said we'd take that baby if it needed placed. And then we found out she was pregnant with twins, and we said we would take them. So that is how we ended up with nine. So those babies came to us in 2016. Yeah. And then no one ever left. So what we thought God was calling us to, lifelong foster parents, really was lifelong raising these 9 kids and keeping 2 sibling groups together. Yeah. So it's pretty neat.
Wow. So a sibling set of 6 and a sibling set of 3.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. That is incredible. So my goodness. So when they first came, so you got your first 3, you had been a caseworker, so you were familiar with the trauma and all of the things. So what was like that to actually bring children with trauma histories, possible prenatal exposure, all the things into your home? What was it like? How was that? Tell us about how you felt, how that went.
Yeah. It was pretty wild. You think, because you've had exposure, and being a caseworker, yes, I saw a lot. But having them in your home, and I think too, starting with 3, when people tell stories of, oh, and then we had our first baby, like we've never experienced a brand new baby except for the twins coming home from the hospital, but biologically, and then we've never experienced one child alone, adding one more child, it was 3 right away. So that was pretty, that really rocked our world. Really, really rocked our world. And I ended up experiencing some anxiety and some depression out of that. And that took I don't know, probably at least 2 or 3 years for me to realize, oh, I think I'm struggling and I need to get some help for that. So ended up doing some counseling for that, which was hugely helpful. But it was just it isn't babysitting. It's not temporary. They come and they are there. And so it was one night, just my husband and I. And then the next day it was, oh, now we are parents to 3 kids. And now we're managing school and we're managing doctors and we're managing counseling and all of the things.
Mm.
They were in a foster home for a year before they came to us with a wonderful Christian single lady. We are still in touch with her. And she did a phenomenal job with them, but they had been with her for a year, and then where they were before that with their birth parents was just total chaos. So coming to our home where it's a mom and a dad and there's some structure and some discipline, they really had no idea how to live in a two-parent, fairly typical household. So it was just an adjustment all the way around for them and for us to figure out all the things. And they're lovely kiddos, and their behaviors as little ones really weren't that. The way they responded to their trauma was not fairly typical from my experience. So there wasn't a lot of acting out. Their behaviors when they were younger were more typical. So we didn't have a lot of trouble that way. It was just really more the adjustment of bringing in 3 kids at once and 3 kids who, had to learn how to function in a different environment and have different parents and yeah, a lot of change.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. Now we had 3 biological children, and we didn't set out to foster or adopt. So we were, happy in doing what we were doing, and then took in a relative child. So we did a
Mhm.
kinship,
Yeah.
um, and she came at 8. And the way she came to us kept her out of foster care, but we were not foster parents. We actually got legal custody of her. A judge issued us legal custody of her. So we had zero training of any kind. We didn't understand trauma. We didn't understand anything about anything. Did your training as having been a caseworker, did your professional experience equip you for the things that you would most likely run into parenting children that came through foster care?
I think it did help a lot. And we actually adopted the kiddos from the county that I worked in when I was a caseworker. They were not, a couple of them weren't even born yet when I was a caseworker, so I didn't have any prior experience with them. But it was helpful in that, yes, my training was a lot of the training that the foster parents would get in that county. I knew the workers, I knew how the whole system worked. So I guess logistically, there were a lot of things, yes. But I still say, and I don't want to scare anybody off, I still think that you don't get the real training until the kids are in your home. So even all the pre-service to get licensed, I feel like you can learn all the things, but until you're actually doing the work of parenting the children, there's still stuff they can't teach you. I guess it's a lot of stuff that you can apply, but until you're experiencing it, yeah, it's very different. But I do feel like it was very helpful to have the education of the backgrounds of where some of these kids come from, the things that they have experienced, the ways that they might respond to those things. Yeah.
Yeah. And we adopted internationally and brought home a sibling
Mhm.
set of 3. So I know what it's like to okay, now we all of a sudden, have doubled the size of our family, and we have these 3 kids, and they, in all things considered, they came in, and yes, there was a language difference. Yes, we had to figure out, academically, educationally, where they were at. There were medical things, but it wasn't, it was, I call it blessed chaos, but it wasn't horrible and, terrible at that point. They were like 9, 7, and 3 when they came. But then
Um,
a few years later, we went back for a younger sibling, and he was 5 when we adopted him. And we thought, oh, this will be easy because now we're just bringing home one little 5-year-old. But that one
yeah.
little 5-year-old had spent all 5 of those years in an orphanage,
Wow.
And definitely, he did get diagnosed with fetal alcohol syndrome. So he had like all of the things. So
Yeah.
the second we met him, we knew we have no clue. We have no, we're going to need help. And that set us on a journey of actually beginning to like, okay, now if we need help helping this child. So we got that education. And then as we learned about trauma, we, learned TBRI and all of the things. It was like, oh, these other children actually do have trauma and some of these other things. It might not have been screaming directly in our face, but there were things. And then began to learn, to be able to better support them. But yeah, it was, we were already parents of three biological children and thought, well, we know what we're doing, but
Right.
you have no idea what you're doing. And like you said, once they're in your home, no matter what your training was before that, this is like the real deal, right? This is it's on the job training. You're
Yeah.
learning as you go.
Yes.
And, there's nothing like that. And,
No.
we
Oh, and we're so thankful for all of the work that people have done over the years to learn about trauma and how it impacts kids and how their brains function. When our oldest three came to us in '06, the message literally was, there's some differences. Yes, they've been exposed to some things, but if you parent them like you would any other kid, they'll be fine.
yeah,
And we
doesn't
know
work.
now that that is absolutely not the case at all. Yeah. So we're so thankful for all the education that's available now because people need it. They really need it.
Yeah. And I find it's ongoing learning because,
Mhm.
we didn't have any education. And then by the time we brought our three kids home, I did knew, before we traveled to get them, I read a book about attachment because then we're like, okay, now we're going to on purpose do this for the first time. Our daughter was placed with us. It was an emergency and we were a relative. Now we're going to on purpose pursue this. And so I heard like you should read about attachment. So I read a little bit about attachment. And then by the time everybody was home, I found Dr. Purvis's book, The Connected Child, read that, attended all her things in person and online, simulcasts and things like that. And but it's continuing. I mean, I had to go for professional training on the fetal alcohol spectrum disorders because two of our kids were diagnosed with fetal alcohol syndrome. When they were diagnosed, there was nothing out there really that was helpful. Now thankfully, there was some, and then now we're able, that's why I'm so passionate about providing that. But it's constant learning. I'm reading a book now that it's probably been around for quite a while, Beyond Behaviors. I don't know if
Okay.
you've heard of it. Yeah. So, and it's like, I don't know why I never came across this book before, but it's just reinforces it. I feel like it very much lines up with like Dr. Purvis and all of the things that we've, taught and we've learned previously about attachment and connection and parenting kids with brain differences. So it's
Yeah.
constant learning and understanding because it's a deep, I think it's a deep well of things to learn about our kids because of the histories, the complex histories that many of them have had and how it has affected their brain and their body. So we're
Absolutely.
always learning.
Hmm.
Right? Yeah.
Constantly.
Yeah. So now were any of your kiddos diagnosed with an FASD or any type of thing?
No, not FASD. And that it's so interesting because I think that some of them probably would be now, but it was back in that time where that really wasn't a thing. And I feel like for me, just probably over the past couple years where we are, we've started hearing about it more. And I've thought, oh boy, because their birth mothers do have reported that they were using alcohol. Um, when they were pregnant. So I'm sure that it's in there somewhere. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And it's a lot of times parents don't know.
Hmm.
And then even if they do read that, most of the time we don't get a diagnosis, especially with foster care and adoption. We don't have that history. We don't always know. And then if we do know, it's hard to get a diagnosis. So I won't take our conversation all the way in that direction because I could talk about that forever. But it's not uncommon for foster and adoptive parents to not know. And then also be dealing with big behaviors and not understand possibly where that's coming from. So
Right.
that's not uncommon at all. So I always like to ask. So how old are all of the kids now, and how's everybody doing?
Yeah. The kids are 24, 22, 21. Sometimes I have to go slow.
Yeah, me too.
24, 22, 21, 17, 15, 13, 11, and then the twins are 10.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
have 8 kids, so
Wow.
I have to do the same thing because it's
Yeah.
like, and I always tell them after you reach 21, I am not responsible to know your age. I know your date of birth, but I can't keep track, right?
Keep track of how old you are.
Can't keep track. And because my oldest is 35, I think he's going to be
Okay.
36 this year,
Yeah.
down to 20, Slavi will be
Okay.
21.
Yeah.
And then I have 11 grandchildren. So it's kind of
Oh,
like,
wow.
I can't keep I don't and forget
No,
it.
you're not going to remember all of that.
No.
I love that so much. 8 kids, 11 grandkids. I'm sure your whole
Yeah.
family is probably just such a gorgeous sight to see. That's so neat.
It,
Yeah.
it's still blessed chaos, but chaos
Yeah.
nonetheless.
Yeah.
'Cause
Different kind. Right. Yeah. Our oldest, our 24-year-old is getting married in July. So that's super exciting. She was 4.5 when she came to us, and we had no idea, what that would look like for her. But she's just a phenomenal young lady. She loves the Lord, marrying an amazing young man who loves the Lord. They're both walking with him and serving him locally at our church. And it's just really, really neat to see and to look back at when she came at 4.5, and just have no idea what her journey is going to look like, to see all that the Lord has done in her and through her. Um, and that with all of her heartache, that she has chosen to follow the Lord, and walk with him and wants to serve him, is just, it's more than we could have asked for. So it's very exciting time for them. We're doing the wedding dress shopping and the talking to caterers. And um, I still feel like I'm not old enough or mature enough to have a child that's getting married. Like, I can't believe she's old enough and mature enough to get married. So it's interesting, but we're really excited for them. And one of her biggest things was finding someone who would like our family. She's got 8 younger siblings, and our house is not quiet usually. There's always something going on. There's always people around, obviously. And so her hope has always been that she'd find somebody who would be willing to enter into that. And her fiance does that so beautifully. He loves everyone. His home is pretty quiet. He's one of four, and there's just 2 kids at home now still. And the first couple times he was here, I was like, "Are you okay? If you need to leave, you can go." He was like, "I love it. I absolutely love it." So when we get to church on Sunday mornings, they go to our church, and she doesn't live at home anymore. She has an apartment. But when we get to church, they go looking for him, and then they look for her. So it's very sweet. Our 11-year-old, who's on the spectrum, just adores our daughter's fiance. And it's so neat to see him go hunt him down so he can give him a hug. And it's really neat. So we're super, super excited about all of that. Um, and then our 22-year-old son actually is in residential treatment in Arkansas. We're in Ohio. We live in Ohio, and he's in residential treatment in Arkansas. And so they're full biological siblings, and she was 4.5 when she came, and he was 2.5. And their stories have just turned out so differently. We know the Lord is not done with any of us yet, so we don't know what's coming for our son. But right now, he's just got some really serious mental health struggles,
Mhm.
and he needs a lot of help. So we were super blessed to learn about this place in Arkansas. It's Christian Treatment Center, and they work really, really hard with all of these things that we have learned about as foster and adoptive parents, all these things that we've learned about with TBRI, like the way trauma impacts brains and how to work with people. Um, that's so much of their focus, really getting to the root cause of whatever the young man is coming for treatment. And they deal with all kinds of things. So they have kids who struggle with addictions and, mental health disorders. So it's really neat. We are very involved in the process, and we're getting some counseling from them along with our son so that we know what he's working through and how to meet his needs. So it's really neat, just such a blessing. So also just I can't think of the words I'm looking for, the spectrum of that, of our daughter was moving out into her own apartment, and he was leaving for a different therapy program that he tried before this one. And so, we're moving her into this independence, and she's thriving. And then he has spiraled completely, and we've got to get, some serious intervention for him. So holding both of those things was really awkward, and then we're managing the other 7 kids, it just was a lot. And even now, juggling him being in Arkansas and the appointments that we have, but we're planning a wedding for her. It's just such a mix of, the words escape me. It's just such a wild thing to watch both things happen, and we're pulled, both directions. But God, I think I said to you before we started, like sometimes my husband and I, last night I said to him, I feel like we don't even have time to breathe. We have so much going on. But it allows us so clearly to see how God carries us and how he gives us what we need to do, what we need to do, even if we feel like I cannot wrap my mind around all of this right now. Our 21-year-old is getting ready to run the Boston Marathon. So we're actually leaving for Boston tomorrow. And I'm like, how are we managing all these things? I don't know, but we are. And it's clearly only the Lord. I find myself regularly saying, okay, thank you for giving me such a story to live that I cannot claim any of it for myself. I cannot say, oh, look at what I have done. Look at what I am able to do, because I wouldn't be able to do it at all on my own without the Lord carrying and providing. So, yeah.
Sandra Flach, host of the Adoption and Foster Care Journey podcast, and FASD educator Debbie Raymond invite you to join Hope for the FASD Journey, a virtual support community for parents and caregivers raising individuals with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, diagnosed or not. This faith-based support community meets online 3 times each month, features special VIP guests, and a private Facebook group for members only, which includes Soul Care Saturday video devotionals led by Sandra and Deb. Both Sandra and Deb are adoptive moms raising kids with FASD and facilitators of the Facets neurobehavioral model. For details and to register, visit justicefororphans.ny.org/hope-community. That's justicefororphans.ny.org/hope-community.
So, Kirsten, before I cut you off, you just covered 3 of the kids. And I find like already that's so typical because, and maybe it's more noticeable in a bigger family where, we've got these kids and they're all in different places, and even biological siblings. I mean, I've got 4 biological siblings that we adopted. The youngest 2 are both diagnosed with fetal alcohol syndrome, but even that, they present differently. They're on different trajectories. And we've got kids who are walking with the Lord and then kids that are not. So it's just, we need the Lord to get through, and he's not finished with any of them, or like you said, us yet. And we need to rely on him. So what can you tell us about the others, whatever you want to share?
Yeah, we've got 2 in high school, and it's interesting. Our middle set is way more typical than our oldest set and our youngest 3 of the 6. So this middle set, I don't know what the difference is, but they're way more typical. And 2 in high school, and they're doing well. They're very involved, very athletic. These 3 are very, very athletic. So they both play basketball. One of them's running track. He's talking about maybe trying a football practice this summer to see how he likes it. He's always not wanted to get hurt and then have to miss any basketball, but he wants to give it a shot. So we'll see. And then so that's a boy and a girl. Our daughter is basketball, and then she's also in choir, loves to sing. And then we have 2 in middle school, and one of them, very typical, he plays basketball and football, and he's doing track right now. And then the other one that's in middle school is on the spectrum, and so those 3 are in typical public school, and then this next one is in an all special needs school. So everyone that in his school is somewhere on the autism spectrum. And he is one of the smartest people that I know. He knows everything. And we're all always asking him, like, do you know about this? Or like time, he's really into history. He was not coming out of school on time yesterday because they were watching this documentary about Egypt and he didn't want to leave until it was over, which is fine. But they were like, we're so sorry. I'm like, I could care less. He reads all the time. So like during meal time, he'll say, oh, I'll be right back. I got to go get a book. And he'll go get like a book about math or a book about science or a book about history. If we're going out to eat, which we don't often because that's a lot of people and going out to eat is expensive anyway. But we always say like, hey, do you have a book? Because he'll bring a book in the car and then he'll sit at the table and read. It's fascinating. But his behaviors can be really quite explosive because he's on the spectrum and sometimes he just has these big, wild behaviors. And then our youngest two are our twins and they're in fourth grade. And our son it's a boy and a girl. Our son is pretty typical kid too. And then our daughter has, and I cannot remember what it's called right now, but I could look it up and send it to you. She has a chromosome disorder where she's missing the tail end of one chromosome. And it causes obesity and global developmental delay. And the other words are escaping me. I feel like I should have like a little cheat sheet, like a little list so I can recall these things. She's fairly delayed. She is. She's behind school-wise and always will be. They're doing a lovely job of working with her. She will likely never be at grade level. Every time I say that, though, I'm like, well, God can do anything. And so we don't know what his plan is for her, But she is the sweetest child I think I have probably ever met in my life. So loving and empathetic. And she loves the Lord. She talks about Jesus. She loves to sing to him. She loves to pray. Little things will happen that are sweet, like we'll look out the window and see a beautiful sunset and she'll say like, oh, mama, that was Jesus. I'm like, oh, honey. So it is really fascinating to see how she can be so delayed in some areas, but her love for people and the Lord is just huge. And it's not something, we all have to grow in our faith and our, we see that in a spectrum in our kiddos. But for her, I already feel like she just has this huge amount of faith that God has instilled in her. And it's just so beautiful to see. So this interesting balance of having such significant needs. And then just having such a beautiful heart, Yeah, it's really neat. So I always say, I had a quick phone call this morning with somebody and she said, well, how are you guys? And I was like, well, we're not okay, but we are okay, So we've got these kids and like, yes, our son is in residential treatment and he's not okay, but he's okay. We've got a lot. We're so busy, but everybody's okay. So they're all doing okay, working through things and yeah. I think ultimately everybody will be all right.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And we trust the Lord for that.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So Kirsten, it's a lot. It's a lot. You've been saying that because you've got a son in residential, you've got kids in high school, you've got kids in fourth grade, you've got a daughter getting married, and there's at least 7 kids home right now. Is that right?
There are 7 kids home.
There are 7 home. And that's a huge family. So I know because being a mom of 8, I know that behind that is a lot of grocery shopping and cooking and laundry and cleaning and running people places and appointments and therapy. Like, how do you navigate all of that?
I don't know. Only the Lord. Sometimes I wonder, I walked into the kitchen this morning and there's something under a stool at the island. And I'm like, what is that? How did that even get, crumbs of some sort? I'm like, how did that even get there? And I just swept last night, which is fine. I'll sweep it again. But it just, it's just kind of this constant thing. And I don't have a lot of tips and tricks. At Mobilize Ohio, I did a breakout about having a larger family. And somebody asked me about meals. And like if I had a meal plan and I said, you'd think after parenting for 20 years, I'd have figured this out by now, but I have not. So I don't have any advice for you. I think everybody's good at their things, So one of my big things is laundry. And I do laundry every day and then I have less to do. And so that's probably my biggest thing that I've learned and done great at. I just do the laundry every day. Now, obviously, there's less now than when we had babies and toddlers and, but I just do 2 to 3 loads every day. And And that does make life easier. Then everybody usually always has what they need. If somebody's like, oh, I have a track meet tomorrow, I need that black shirt. I'm like, oh, it's in the dryer. It'll be ready for you in the morning.
Yeah.
And mealtime, my goodness, can be really wild when you've got such, a range of ages and stages and then kids involved in athletics because sometimes some aren't home at a typical dinner time. Or you're leaving at typical dinner time. Last night we had a track meet that started at 5 and it didn't end until 8:30. And so there's, we're juggling some different things. So I honestly, there's a lot of it that is kind of fly by the seat of your pants and you have to just take each day as it comes. And I think that's a big piece of it is just knowing that the Lord has authored our stories. He knows the number of our days. He knows what's coming and we don't. And so even if I have a plan for how I'm going to manage a day, and I know the kids leave at this time, we have this appointment, then this is happening, I'll make this for dinner at this time, something can easily change. And we just have to be able to go with the flow and roll with whatever's happening and know that it's going to be okay. I think parenting for 20 years, and I'm sure you've experienced so much of this with your youngest being 20, 21. And now I just had one of those train derailments. There's so many things that come up that I realized this is not going to matter, And when I was younger and trying to manage everything and wanting things to be a certain way or, follow a routine, I can look back now and say, oh, we didn't handle this that way and it's okay. That one time of that schedule being off did not mess up life for everybody. So if things don't go according to plan today, it's going to be okay. And I think really too, living with open hands to know that God is in control of every moment. It's not just big things, it's all of the things. And so I look at a lot of our days and say, this isn't going the way I would have wanted it to, but I think the things that the Lord wants to happen are happening. And so it's all going to be okay. Even if I feel like I'm not managing well, it's going to be okay. And I look at our 24-year-old who's getting married. When she came to us, there were certain things about her story that made parenting her challenging and some ways that I wasn't able to connect with her that I would have hoped I could have or that you typically would, I think, when you're parenting a 4.5-year-old. And for years, and I didn't know what I was doing. We made some discipline mistakes and we made some teaching mistakes. For years, I thought, oh man, I have messed her up. I have really, really screwed this up. She did some of her own trauma therapy work when she was probably 20, 21. And my husband and I were doing some counseling at the same time, ended up being with the same person that counseled with her. And we went in for a session for us, for our marriage. But she said, before we start, I have to tell you that your daughter is so securely attached to you. And I was like, what? She said she just loves you guys and feels so safe with you. And I said, oh my word, I thought I ruined her life. Like, I really thought she's going to grow up and move out and be like, phew, I'm glad I'm done with those people. They didn't know what they were doing. We have such a sweet friendship. It just really blew my mind. So even when we think we have messed up royally, God still has us. Even if we think we've done a great job, God is still sovereign over that too. So it's very neat to look back and think, you said, how do you do it all? I often say, I don't know. Like we just kind of do, and then we trust that God is gonna work it all out.
Yeah.
I know practically that doesn't provide a lot of answers, but that's what we've seen.
Yeah, but I think too when we have our eyes on the Lord and we want him to have his way, his will, and we're doing the best we can to follow his lead, right? He does work it out. We might not have it, I don't think I remember I always did laundry every day too. I always, even still today, we have just like three and a half of us home because our 23-year-old son is sort of like half here and half moved into the apartment next door attached to our garage. He's not all the way, it's not done yet. So he's kind of bouncing back and forth, but In fact, I think he made bacon in the middle of the night because I got up this morning and I'm like, the frying pan with the stuff was still in it. And I'm like, I don't even remember smelling bacon in my sleep or anything like so. So he'll be cleaning that when he gets home from work, I assure you. But anyway, you never know what you're getting, right? You never know what's going to happen. But just trusting the Lord that he's going to work it all out and he's going to give us each day what we need to get through each day. And, similar story. We have our daughter who came to us through kinship. We made all of the mistakes.
Yeah.
And, I think I had a lot of blocked care when we were raising her and didn't, I always ask the Lord, help me to love her like you love her because I'm not feeling it. I wasn't feeling the warm fuzzies. So, but now she's in her 30s and lots of challenge, a lot of trauma, a lot of difficulty, especially even through her 20s. But now because the biggest thing is connection. If we can
Yeah.
continue connection over, always being critical or, issuing those consequences or, that tough love, which I don't agree with when it comes to our kids who've had tough early lives. Um, you know, she wanted me in the delivery room when she was going to have her first child. Like so it was just connection, being there. We don't have to do everything perfectly.
Right.
And we learn like, cause who was the person who coined that phrase? We don't know what we don't know.
Right.
I've heard different people say it, but we didn't know, but we did the best we could. And as we learned, we did better. And
Yes.
just building that connection, I think is huge and goes such a long way because we have hearts. We want to do the right thing, right? That's our heart. We want to do the right thing. So also, Kirsten, I wanted to ask you about how you and Josh maintain your marriage because large families, all of the things, it's hard to focus on our marriage. My husband always called it marriage maintenance. Like if we managed a date night or we, managed a conversation alone for 10 minutes, this is marriage maintenance. But you have to prioritize that. So what do you guys do?
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. God has been so gracious because we made lots of mistakes um, before we got married and then early in our marriage, and we had some big things happen that we didn't handle well. And I often say, we would be the last people, if I were God, we would be the last people that I would choose to have live out this story with all these kids because we have been such a train wreck. And yet, in his sovereignty, he's like, nope, I'm going to call you guys to do this. I really think over the past 2 years, probably year and a half, our marriage has gotten stronger than it's ever been. And I know that can happen with time too. We've both matured quite a bit. We'll celebrate 25 years in August. And it's interesting. We had a year when I think the twins were probably 2 years old. We had a year where we had a girl who was babysitting, um, you know, regularly for us. She came to us and said, I feel like I'm supposed to offer you guys babysitting one night a week for an entire year as like a missional thing. Like God's calling me to do missional work for your family to commit one night a year or one night a week for the whole year. And of course, we took her up on that. She's the only person that ever had all of the kids on her own for an extended period of time, 4 hours, 5 hours. Um, and it was interesting because we were having some struggles during that time and we didn't always get along. And I remember saying, why are we even doing a date a week if we can't even have a conversation where we're enjoying each other, or if there's something we need to have a conversation about and we're not having it because it would be uncomfortable and we don't want to. So we're just out pretending like we're okay and we're not okay. But the Lord has been so faithful to bring us through all of that. And so, really, it's hard to have date nights now regularly. Um, but we have really started to find so much joy in just being able to have those, 10-minute conversations when there isn't a child interrupting or around, or even to say, hey, we need 5 minutes to finish this conversation and then we'll answer your question, you know? Um, and I think seeing who we have both become through this journey and seeing what God has done with our family and how he's held it all together and allowed us to do all these things has really brought this tenderness and this deep appreciation for each other. We couldn't have done any of it on our own. We've needed each other. And even though we haven't, there have been times where we've struggled relationally and we haven't been getting along, or we've not been, talking much past parenting the children. God has still kept us together as a team to do that. And I think that's been really important for the kids to see and for us to see. So we don't have this formula of, we have a date night once a week or every other week, or we sit down and have a conversation and cover these 5 points one night a week. It's sort of like with the rest of the things, like with meals and stuff like that. There are days where I'm like, I don't know how this is going to go. We're just going to find out and trust that the Lord has it. So I don't have any magic advice other than to keep going to the Lord and keep surrendering the relationship to the Lord, trusting that He brought you together for a purpose. Like the kids that have come into our home didn't end up here accidentally. And we don't know all of the reasons why God brought our family together the way that He did, but God knows, and He'll reveal that stuff over time. And I think it's the same way with our marriage. I don't know why some of the things have happened that have happened, but God's been doing a work of redemption in both of us, and in our marriage. So yeah, it's been hard. And I think adding all of these kids probably didn't make any of it easier, but it's, I think it's really refined us though, too.
Yes.
When you have so much going on, there's a level of selfishness that you just don't even have the opportunity to attempt to have, because you're constantly giving and doing and showing up for someone else. Which I heard one time years ago, like if you screw up with your first kid, God's going to give you another one to give you another chance, and He'll keep giving you. I don't think this is actually how it works. But I laughed because I said we had to get to 9. God's like, you guys still don't know what you're doing. You need more kids to help you get there. But He's used it all. He's used it all, I think, to strengthen us and strengthen our marriage.
Yeah, it's definitely, and I think the Lord does that with our marriages, but also with us individually, right? Because it's that, we're refined through the fire, right? Where,
Yes.
As we walk through this life and hard things come, they're supposed to draw us closer to the Lord, right?
Yep.
And the same thing in, whether it's through parenting or in our marriages, we face those hard things, we weather them together, we grow, right? And our marriages are strengthened, hopefully, right? That's the
Yes.
direction we're supposed to be heading in anyway. And again, it's keeping our eyes on the Lord and walking with Him through these things for sure. And, which leads me really to my next question is, what do you do for soul care? Like some people call it self-care. I
Right.
call it soul care because it's more than just, a bubble bath or a piece of chocolate. It is the whole person, and especially our spirit, our relationship with the Lord, right? So what do you do to take care of you?
Yeah. Spend time in the Word every day. And I talk to the Lord all the time. I know that there's the whole idea of having a dedicated prayer time or a prayer closet, which I have aspired to. I just have not gotten there yet. But I just feel like it's a constant conversation. The phone call that I had before I got on with you today, I ended that phone call and I just said, it's all yours, Lord, this story, my life, so just kind of being in constant conversation with Him, with God. And we have Christian music playing regularly. We have some Google speakers in our kitchen, so it's kind of always on downstairs, or I'll turn on some Christian music stuff on YouTube in the kitchen and just have it on the TV. And we pray, obviously, as a not obviously, because I said I talk to the Lord all the time. We pray as a family every night, and just have lots of conversations about where is the Lord in something that's going on. My husband and I will have those conversations, or pointing something toward the Lord, or something that's happening in the kids' lives, and making sure that they know, like, this is God opening this door for you, or this was God protecting you, or God was with you in this event. Just having Him a part of what we do. We're very involved in our church too. We're there every week. The kids are in youth group. And so having lots of connections for,
Mhm.
we talk with the kids about that's our spiritual community, the place where we all, church on Sundays is where our local body of believers gathers together, to worship together. So yeah, pointing it all back to the Lord and being in conversation with him all the time, I think is what has, yeah, helped and carried me. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
And you also chose, because you said every day in the Word, me too, and you chose the verse that we opened with today. I'll read it again. Many are the plans in a man's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails. That is
Yep.
Proverbs 19:21. Why did you choose that verse?
I chose that verse because I found that verse, or the Lord showed me that verse, um, toward the beginning of our infertility journey. And it was at a time in our lives where, we had been married for a couple years, all of our, most of our friends, we were in a young adults group at church, been married a year, 2 years, and a lot of people were starting to get pregnant. And we just thought, I mean, I always wanted to be a mom, and I thought that that's what would happen, that we would
Mhm.
decide we're ready and that we'll get pregnant and I'll have a baby. In my mind, there was no other way. We had talked about adoption, but we thought down the road after we have some biological kids. And so when it wasn't happening right away, I thought, okay, what's happening? What is happening? Is the Lord up to something else? I was a caseworker at the time and saw situations where it seemed like it should be impossible for someone to conceive a child. The lifestyle that they were living. And I had one client in particular, just such a horrific situation that she was living in and had already had multiple children, had terminated some pregnancies and got pregnant. And I remember thinking, if she can, why can't I? Like, we're doing everything right. I've been to the doctor. I'm taking prenatal vitamins. I'm checking my temperature. We're doing all the things. And by the grace of God, and this is not critical of anyone else. I know everyone who experiences that has, there's such an array of feelings about all of it. But I view our story as by God's grace. Instead of me getting angry and saying, if she can, why can't I? I was on my way home from work and saying that to the Lord, like, I don't understand some of these situations I'm seeing, and it's not happening for me. Why not me? Why am I not getting pregnant? And I felt the Lord say, not audibly, but I felt him say, why not you? Why can't I do something different than with you? Like, your
Mhm.
friends are getting pregnant, but what if I have a different story for you? And completely by his grace, I felt like, okay, why can't you do something different with me? And what does that look like? And if your will is is different than what mine is, that I want to conceive and carry a child, then I want your will more than mine. Whatever that's going to look like, I'll take that. And shortly, around that time, I stumbled upon, though I think the Lord lit it up for me in my Bible, Proverbs 19:21. And I thought, man, I can have this plan in my heart all day long until the end of my days on this earth, but it might not happen. The Lord's purpose is going to prevail over my plan. And so he helped me kind of lock in on that, that I want your purpose for my life more than I want what my plans were. And my husband and we will giggle about it sometimes. I'm like, what kind of a life would we have had? What would we have done for the kingdom? And God uses people to do all kinds of things, so you can get married and conceive and have biological children and still have, a life that you live for the Lord. I know that. But I look at my husband and I and think, what would that have looked like, And maybe we wouldn't have chased him. Maybe we wouldn't have chased the Lord as hard as we have.
Right.
He would have let us have our way. Maybe that's one of the things that he was like, I need
Mhm.
you guys, and to get you, I'm going to have to do this, take
Mhm.
this fertility dream from you
Mhm.
to get you to go down this road. But that verse, I always say, how does someone pick a favorite verse? It's the word of God. And so I think we should love all of them, and I think we do. But that really, for me, through all these years, has just really stuck out. And even in things like with our son having to go to residential treatment, and it isn't just that he went to residential treatment, kids do that, but to watch him spiral and take him to the psychiatric unit of the hospital 4 times and, just be in that space and think he was just this 2.5-year-old little kid. And we thought he'd be fine, and he's not. I have even looked at Proverbs 19:21 and said, okay, the desire of my heart is that this would not be a part of his story, and you just heal him instantly.
Right.
But your purpose is something different. You have more in it. And so help me to hold on to that and want your purpose, more than what I would will for his life. So yeah, it's pretty neat.
Yeah. It's trusting the Lord,
Yeah,
right? Because we have our hopes and dreams, but when it's not looking like that, or at least not how we would do it, right?
right,
We have to
right.
trust the Lord that His will is perfect. He knows best. He has a plan, and He has that purpose, and He'll work it all out. And I think that's a lifelong faith journey to walk in that and to trust and to believe that. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Kirsten, as we wrap up today, and I feel like we could sit and have coffee and talk forever.
I
I
feel
love
like
our
we need
conversation.
to
Yeah,
sometime.
we need to. We definitely need to. And I was thinking when you said you were going to Boston, I'm like, ooh, I'm in New York, so we could. But I have an insane couple of weeks in the next
Aw,
couple of weeks, so I don't think it would work out. I'm not
yeah,
that close to Boston, but one of these somehow we will work it
yes.
out and get together. But in the meantime, as we wrap up today, would you share some words of encouragement for our fellow foster and adoptive parents who are listening?
Yeah, I think that probably the biggest thing that I'm feeling right now is trusting the Lord,
Yeah.
is looking at your story and trusting that God has it, that God has you, that God has the kids that He's calling you to parent. And
Mm.
I think just to seek Him daily and ask Him, and you might have to, I do, throughout the day. You can start the morning asking Him, show me where you are in this. Help me to follow you today. And you might have to stop 2 hours later and say, okay, wait a minute. I need you to remind me again that you're here
Mm.
and that you're working it all out. I often have to step back and look at big picture. And, it's easy to get caught up in the moments and the hard things that happen in a big behavioral meltdown. But I have to step back a lot and look at big picture. And so I think for all of us in this space, all this foster and adoptive moms and dads, to look at knowing there's so much more that God has that we don't know,
Mm.
that we don't know what's happening behind the scenes, that we're just being faithful day by day, and God has something that He's doing and we might not know. My husband and I say we might not see the fruit of some of this while we're still on this earth. We don't know.
Right.
It's huge for the kids that we're parenting now, but we don't know generationally the impact. There may be generations that come after us. You have 11 grandchildren. You don't know what God is going to do through them because you and your husband said yes to the kids that you've said yes to. And to me, even though it's hard sometimes, there's so much encouragement in that. So I would want to encourage people to be willing to trudge through the day to day and trust God with all of it, the good days, the bad days, the good behaviors, the hard behaviors, to know that God is up to something and that He's using you. There are days I'm like, why did we say yes to this? Why are we doing this? We could have said no and had a simpler life. But there are days too where I'm like, wow, Lord, you invited us in to be a part of whatever you are doing. We didn't have to know these kids. We didn't have to know them. We could have never seen them. You have some internationally. Like you really never had to know them. You would have never run
Yeah.
into them.
Right.
Um, and so yeah, just trusting that He's got a big plan and that He's gonna work it all out for our good and for His glory. Ultimately, that's what's gonna happen.
Yeah. Amen to that.
Yeah.
So, Kirsten, thank you so much for that encouraging word. And before we go, is there a way our listeners can connect with you? I know you're on social media. How could listeners find you?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram, though hardly. I feel like, and you're really skilled, I feel like, with this stuff, but I feel like I have not figured it all out yet. And it's funny because I'm not that old, but I feel like I'm too old for all this. Even like tapping the credit card. I was like, how
Yeah.
do I tap this is so weird. Anyway, I am on Instagram. Um, And then, yeah, I don't know if you've got something where you like add email or something. I would be
Yeah,
fine if you did that,
sure.
so people could get a hold of me. Yeah, I'm available and I love to talk, love to visit, love to pray for someone. So whatever.
Well, we will include your social media handles and your
Okay.
email in the show notes in case our listeners do want to connect with you. And of course, Kirsten, thank you so much for sharing your story and for being on with us today. You're an inspiration as well, and just thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And thank you for tuning in to the adoption and foster care journey today. I hope you were inspired and encouraged by my conversation with Kirsten Smith. Be sure to connect with her on social media and look for her email address in the show notes if you'd like to send her a note or ask her a question. She is based in Ohio. Not only do we seek to inspire and encourage you through this podcast, but of course, I have resources to equip you for your unique parenting journey. If you are raising children who were prenatally exposed to alcohol, you need to be a member of the Hope for the FASD Journey online support group. If you're interested in something that's more of a one-on-one personalized approach, I also offer FASD parent coaching. And in addition to that, of course, I have online and in-person workshops. So you can find out more on our website, justicefororphansny.org. Just click on Adoption and Foster Care Journey. Once you get there, there is a link in the show notes to make it super easy. Please subscribe, follow, leave a review, follow this podcast, share it with your fellow foster and adoptive friends so that they can find this podcast to be a resource as well. If you like to watch your podcasts, every episode is in the video form on the Justice for Orphans YouTube channel, so you can go there and check that out. And again, thank you so much for being with us today. I am grateful that you spent your valuable time with me. I'm thrilled to have you along for the journey.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Adoption and Foster Care Journey podcast, brought to you by Justice for Orphans. We hope you were encouraged today. Please be sure to subscribe to this podcast and leave a review, and share it with your fellow foster and adoptive parent friends so they can be encouraged too. Be sure to find and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Justice for Orphans, and check out our website for vital resources at justicefororphansny.org.